Say one more time. Yes. American. I'll tell you.
About 8 months ago, 6 months ago. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not a problem. He was let in on. Maybe they're here. Have fun.
I'm sure where James is. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, November 25th, 2019 meeting of the Durham County Board of Commissioners. I will now share the public charge. The Board of Commissioners asks its members and citizens to conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the board and fellow citizens. At any time, should any member of the board or any citizen fail to observe this public charge, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until that individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until such time that a genuine commitment to the public charge is observed. As a courtesy to others, please turn off cell phones during the meeting. And I'd now ask that we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any agenda adjustments? I think we do no longer have a closed session this evening. Is that correct? Okay, you actually already took it off. Okay. Thank you. And also, I'd like to entertain an excused absence for Commissioner Howerton.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Hill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Commissioner Howerton is unanimously excused. Announcements this evening. What's the 411? How to thrive and live well at age 50. You are invited to join the Durham County Public Health Department on Tuesday, November 26th, 2019 for a presentation sharing tips on a healthy, happy, and vibrant life at the age of 50 and over. This event is free and open to the public, and you can email Alicia Smith at dconc.gov for more information. The Durham Homicide and Victims of Violent Death Memorial Quilt is on display at the Durham County Human Services Building. Sydney Brody, a native of Durham, has made this quilt and unfortunately continues to add to the quilt, even as it has been sitting in the Durham County Human Services Building. And unfortunately, the events of the past 24 hours in our community, there will be more patches added to the quilt. Every time Sydney adds a name to the quilt, he sews up the black border on the quilt, hoping that it will be the last time that he has to add a name to the quilt. So if you have not seen the quilt yet, please come to 414 East Main Street. It will be in our building until the end of this week. Well, actually, till Wednesday, November 29th. The Durham Local Reentry Council will be hosting a reentry simulation. Participants looking to gain increased understanding of obstacles faced by individuals adjusting to society following incarceration are invited to the reentry simulation on Friday, December 6th, 2019, from 10 to 12 noon at the Criminal Justice Resource Center, 326 East Main Street. If you are interested, please contact Rashonda Parker, rparker@DCONC, or by calling 919-560-0550. This is a great opportunity for people in our community, whether you're a business owner or a member of the faith community, just really anybody in our community to gain insight into what it's like when people come back into our community. 700 people a year come back into Durham who are coming back from prison or from our jails. And this is the simulation to help people understand all the different things they have to go through to get, to become part of our community again. Light Up Durham, the 15th Annual American Tobacco Tower Lighting and City of Durham Tree Lighting will take place on December 6th, 2019. The celebration will begin at 5:30 p.m. at the American Tobacco Campus and ends at the CCB Plaza. The Men's Health Council of Durham hosts Men on the Move Walk with Jeff is having their monthly walk on December 7th from 9 to 10 a.m. at the Community Life and Recreation at Lyon Park Center, 1309 Halley Street. And it begins with health tips and warm-ups. Nobody has to register, so please come on out and join in. Public input is needed on the regional plan to reduce reliance on single occupancy vehicles. What do you think about carpooling, vanpooling, public transit, biking, walking, teleworking, and flexible work weeks? The Durham Chapel Hill Carborough Metropolitan Planning Organization is seeking your feedback on strategies and policies to reduce single occupancy vehicles for travel. In other words, trying to reduce the congestion and traffic on our roads. The proposed plan can be viewed by visiting, and I'm not going to read this, you can go to our website. Public comment period is open until Tuesday, December 10th. Comments can be submitted directly to Dale McKeel at dale.mckeel@durhamnc.gov or by calling 919-560-4366, extension 36421. So this is important. We really love to get input from the community on this plan. The health insurance marketplace open enrollment period is ending soon. Do you need health insurance for 2020? The open enrollment through the health insurance marketplace is now open until December 15th. To learn more and enroll, please visit www.healthcare.gov. You may qualify for a very low health insurance policy. The Art of Mental Health at the Rubenstein Art Center, Discover Durham, invites you to the community exhibit of artwork by local artists showcasing mental health and wellness. This exhibit ends January 24th next year and is open to the public Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 6 p.m. You can find out more at www.discoverdurham.com. And as the renovation of the Judicial Building Annex are completing, the Durham County Board of Elections is moving back into their offices at 201 North Roxborough Street. During this quick transition, the Board of Elections office will be closed, but will reopen with normal business hours on Wednesday, November 27th, 8:30 a.m. For more information about the Board of Elections, please visit its website at www.dcovotes.com. I know that Criminal Justice Resource Center and others will be glad for them to get back into their offices. Are there any additional announcements? I do want to acknowledge, as I said with the quilt announcement, that it has been a very difficult 24 hours in our community. I know that people are very upset about what has been happening in our community. There are no easy answers, but there are a lot of things that people can do on many different levels. And one of them is very simple, and that is for people to store their guns safely and lock their cars with their guns in them, and also to store their guns safely at home and lock them. Last year we had more than 800 guns that were taken from people's homes and cars, a lot from people's cars that amazingly enough were unlocked, and the guns were not locked and stored away. That's a very simple thing that people can do to make sure that guns don't get into the hands of the wrong people. Also, an immediate thing is that our law enforcement is working together very closely to try to focus on the few people that are causing a lot of the violence that we see in our community. This type of collaboration is very important. We also need our court system and everybody to work together to make sure that the most violent people who are accused of the most violent crimes do not end up back on our streets. In terms of long-term solutions, we are trying to work on that in the county. We have programs like Project Build that works with gang prevention, Bull City United that is working on conflict resolution and stopping revenge killings and people using guns to resolve conflicts, and is connecting people to jobs. But they're only in 2 neighborhoods right now, and we would be good to expand that program. We have many programs. Criminal Justice Resource Center has many programs that tries to reconnect people who come back into our community, make transitions into jobs, make sure that people get the mental health treatment, substance use treatment that they need. And again, everything that the county does is focused on the root causes. But again, it takes the whole community. And things that people can do are business owners giving people a second chance with a job. Faith communities helping to support people who come back in to the community, mentoring children. We have our Durham Pre-K program, helping to make sure that everybody feels they have a bright future in our community. And we can all find a way to be a caring community and help address what is happening in our community. Okay, we have our minutes from our work session on October 7th.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve them, and I do want to note that I thought the minutes were absolutely excellent this particular time. This was a very long and complicated work session, and the minutes were very, very good. So thank the staff for their work.
Ditto. So, moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Hill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are unanimously approved. And we have several ceremonial items this evening. One is for National Radon Action Month. And do we have Philip Gibson with us from I don't know if we have Philip here. Philip is here. Wow. Thank you, Philip. So if you don't mind coming up to the podium over here, we have Philip from the North Carolina Radon Program and James Salter from the Durham County Public Health. James, if you don't mind coming up too, thank you both so much for being here. I will read this proclamation and then we would love to have some comments from you about why this is important. Durham County Board of Commissioners Proclamation, National Radon Action Month 2019. Whereas radon is a colorless, odorless, radioactive gas that may threaten the health of our citizens and their families, and whereas radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States and is the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers, and whereas the National Academy of Sciences estimates that up to 21,000 lung cancer deaths occur in the United States each year, and whereas 1 in 15 homes across the U.S. has elevated radon levels, and whereas any home may have elevated levels of radon, even if neighboring homes do not, and living in a home with an average radon level of 4 picocuries per liter of air poses a similar risk of developing lung cancer as smoking half a pack of cigarettes a day. And whereas testing for radon is simple, inexpensive, and radon problems can be fixed, and whereas Durham County, the U.S. Surgeon General, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, North Carolina Radon Program, and the North Carolina Advisory Committee on Cancer Coordination and Control support efforts to encourage homeowners to test their homes for radon. And whereas many residents in Durham County don't know about radon, yet need to know for the safety and health of their families. Now, therefore, I, Wendy Jacobs, Chair of the Durham Board of County Commissioners, and on behalf of the Durham Board of County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim January 2020 as National Radon Action Month in Durham County, North Carolina. This, the 25th day of November, 2019. Wendy Jacobs, Chair, Durham Board of County Commissioners. So, we would love to hear about what people in Durham can do. This is something that we can do something about. So thank you for being here.
Sure. Commissioner Jacobs, Philip Gibson he heads up the radon protection program for the state. And since 2014, Durham has participated. I believe Philip gets a grant from is it EPA? Yeah, EPA grant each year, and it allows the state to purchase radon test kits. And we've been able to get about 150 per year since 2014, and we do an initiative each year during January. Sometimes it extends beyond January, but we try to educate. We send out press releases, and we actually, on several occasions, we have set up tables in the Health and Human Services building and set out displays and encourage people to, take the kits and use them. Like you said earlier, they're very simple to deploy. very small, unintrusive, about the size of an index card, as a matter of fact, and you hang it in your home where you sit a lot, spend most of your time for 3 to 5 days, no more than 7 days, and then you collapse the kit and you send it off, drop it in the mail, and you have a unique number, and you can go online and actually track that, the results of that test. And I do get some results back that come across my email, but Philip will actually get notifications when high levels are detected in a home, and he actually can do some coaching and counseling and help with remediation. The sad part about it, or the good part about it, I guess, is that remediation of high levels in a home is not very expensive at all. It can be as little as $700-800. I think the average is around $1,500. So, yeah, it's sad that if you're living in a home that the air is poisoned with radon and it's like smoking cigarettes all day, that it could be fixed for that easily.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, and we'd love to hear from you as well.
Yes, first off, I want to say thank you for all of you all for your leadership and recognizing the importance of National Radon Action Month to Durham County. So it is important. It's a national recognition, but nonetheless, here in Durham County, it's especially important. Your voice is leading this environmental, basically your voice on this leading environmental cause of lung cancer will lead to increased awareness in radon-induced lung cancer and hopefully increased testing by homeowners. Unless my research is incorrect, Durham County has about 100,000 housing units. From 2008 to 2017, there were 926 do-it-yourself test kits actually used. So while we work very hard to distribute test kits. They oftentimes don't get used. They're valued at about $17 retail. So we're hoping that with your voice, this will increase. The maximum level of those tested within Durham County from that period, from 2008 to 2017, was 15.4. So the action level is 4.0, which your risk at 4.0 for a smoker is, if you've ever smoked tobacco products, is 62 out of 1,000. For a never smoker, it's 7 out of 1,000. So if I had those kind of odds with the lottery, I would actually play the lottery. So it's high. So 15.4 is a high number. So that puts it at 10. You're looking at, for a smoker, about 150 out of 1,000 risk for lung cancer. About 18 for a never smoker. So I want to also just mention the North Carolina Radon Program has partnered with a number of groups in Durham to increase awareness and distribute free test kits. So Durham County Health Department, we've also partnered with Duke, and we continue to partner with these entities, Duke Cancer Institute and others. In fact, in January, we'll be giving out 3,000 test kits throughout the state of North Carolina through our website at ncradon.org. There will be a webinar series for anyone who's interested. They're free. NC State University is our technology host. So we'll have physicians, PhD, and one of the speakers is actually Evan Kane from Wake County Environmental Health. Wake County is facing, just because they've been testing and finding this, they're estimating roughly 1 out of 5 homes in the northeastern part of Wake County to actually have elevated radionuclides in their drinking water. So they've actually been doing some things with the health department, with specifically developers and new wells that are being permitted there. And then also just want to mention women's wellness event that's happening. Dr. Joan Peckenham, who is with the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, is working. She created if I'm understanding correctly, she's the founder of the women's wellness event that happens at Duke Cancer Institute, at NC Central University, and others. So we'll be doing that on April 4th and giving away free test kits for that as well.
Fantastic. It would be great, James, next month or in January when you have the kits, we can add some announcement to our announcements about how people can get them. Deborah can put something in the newsletter, even with a link to the webinar. Or,
Yeah,
we're happy to
work
help
with Dawn to get that in.
Yeah, to help get that out. And And this is a great graphic even. Did you get one of these, Deborah? Okay. For us to help put out. And I will say my mother had lung cancer, and we never really, she was a non-smoker, and actually we never really knew where she got it from, and you know, we questioned whether we had a basement in our house, and we actually, that was one of the things that we questioned, whether that's what happened. We just don't know. So.
Yeah, and there's, not to be an alarmist, but Philip may not be aware of this at all, but he mentioned radon in drinking water. I was having a conversation a few weeks ago with a water treatment specialist, and he, you know, radon comes from decaying uranium, and then it's radium, and then it's radon, and then there's something else, but the final stable isotope of that is lead. And when you start talking about lead in water, and now you're looking at filtration systems on most newer refrigerators, and there's concern now that there could be lead building up in those from radon in the water. So there's more and more science and more reason to you know, take note of things like this all the time.
We look forward to you helping us, you know, with solutions and educating the community about what we need to do.
That's a good reason to maintain the filter in your refrigerator.
So maybe we need to do a campaign to remind people to change their water filters. So whatever we can do to help. So thank you so much. Okay. Okay, next on our agenda, we have a letter that our board is sending that will be signed by me, but it is a letter regarding the executive order enhancing state and local involvement in refugee resettlement. Basically, on September 26th, President Trump issued an executive order 13888 enhancing state and local involvement in refugee resettlement in their jurisdictions. And so what this has done is basically create another hurdle for states, counties, and local governments to accept refugees into their communities. And so what we have been found out is that we need to provide a letter to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo explicitly stating that Durham County would like to have refugees be a part of our community. So we are sending that letter. And also, we are sending a letter to Governor Cooper encouraging that he also take action because our concern is that we also need our state government to take action as well as each of the local governments. So we have first a letter addressed to Secretary Pompeo, explicitly stating this letter, Secretary Pompeo, this letter is in reference to Executive Order 13888 on enhancing state and local involvement in resettlement. As chair of the Durham Board of County Commissioners, Durham County, North Carolina, I consent to initial refugee resettlement in Durham County as per terms of the executive order. Sincerely, Wendy Jacobs, Chair, Durham County Board of Commissioners. Then we have also, again, sending a letter to Governor Cooper on behalf of our board asking that he also please make sure that he is explicit with support. We have, I looked up the last count in June of 2019, 70 million displaced people in our world right now due to conflicts and environmental conditions. And the President Trump has put a limit on the number of refugees that can come into the United States now, 18,000 people. Out of 70 million refugees in the world, 18,000 people can come into our country. And now this additional hoop for people and communities to go through. We have wonderful refugee organizations, Church World Relief, many different groups, many members of the faith community that we welcome refugees. Durham Public Schools, we have many refugee children in our schools. We value the diversity of people in our world, and also we want to make sure that we can do what we help or what is happening in our world today. I don't know if any other board members had any comments related to these letters. Commissioner Hill?
Sure, that 18,000 is down from the Obama administration allowed, what I think it was 110,000 refugees during their administration. So it's just such a significant drop, and we know that there are people around the world who are in dire straits and whose very lives depend on leaving the country, that they're being threatened with violence and conflict. So upsetting.
So the city has done similar. So we stand together, the city and the county, for Durham to be a welcoming home for refugees. And so staff will ask that you can send these letters on. Thank you. Okay, we have a number of consent agenda items here, and I just wanted to see if anyone has any questions on Commissioner Carter.
I have a few questions about the first one and the third one.
Okay, so 19 and and the third one. Okay, well, why don't we only have 3 items on there, so why don't we just start with those? First one, 0535.
Yeah, so this is the capital project amendment where we're going to appropriate $6.5 million to Durham Public Schools for a variety of capital projects, and our source of funding will eventually be these limited obligation bonds. And so I guess, first of all, I wanted to say I'm really glad that we're providing this additional funding. It was clear from the list of capital projects that we received that many of these seem to be deferred maintenance sorts of projects that there's not been funding for before this, and I'm just really glad that the county is finding a way to increase the capital funding for DPS, because it certainly is very much needed for things like safety and renovations to improve the environmental health and that sort of thing. My concern, however, is just, what, and I don't expect us to talk about this tonight, but I just wanted to register this concern about how we're going to sustain this sort of funding for DPS, because we're using LOBs this time and limited obligation bonds this time, and I just think that we at some point need to have really in-depth discussion about whether we use limited obligation bonds or general obligation bonds, or just pay-as-you-go funding, because there are different interest rates with those bonds, and just what will we be able to sustain going forward. But I guess there really wasn't a question in that for tonight, but I just feel very concerned about this ongoing need and our ability to provide the funding for them, and especially in light of the fact that the state doesn't provide enough funding for capital needs across North Carolina.
Well, I think you've raised a good point. I don't know if Mr. Manager wants to respond, but yeah, okay.
Any idea when a conversation like this might be appropriate? I mean, I know we're going to be discussing again in January. More.
Right, well, I know that we talked about this at we had a board budget retreat on Friday, and so this is, I think, part of the work that needs to be done, working with the schools, really doing a more integrated capital improvement plan and coming up with strategies for how we're going to pay for everything. So I guess I think it's the work that staff is going to do ongoing, and that they will hopefully come back with a plan as they work together with the schools. So I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, I don't know that at our retreat whether or not we discussed funding for ongoing capital maintenance. And
Yeah.
I think that this needs to be part of the discussion about how often we hold general obligation bond referendums, for one thing. I mean, this could be, if we need to use bonds to help school districts with their ongoing maintenance, I hope we won't, but if we need to, that would certainly need to be part of this rhythm that we're being advised to establish for how often we hold bond referenda.
Right.
So I hope it will be on, as you said, I think it
Right.
should be on the agenda in January and should be part of that session.
Okay, and item 0574.
So this is approval of a resolution authorizing the negotiation of an amendment to an installment financing agreement, making certain findings required by the local government commission and providing for certain other related matters thereto pursuant. And it says we don't have to hold a public hearing because public hearings have been held in the past for these projects when they were initially financed. My question is, did the county hold a public hearing for the financing of the Administration 1 building? And how much of the $145 million that we're being asked to approve tonight as part of this refinancing and financing package is for Admin 1? And I'm sorry I didn't send these questions earlier. I just didn't get to it until late today.
Okay, so can you ask your question one more time to make sure I'm clear?
Yes. First, I guess maybe the first question should be, how much of the $145 million that we're approving tonight in this amendment is for the financing of Administration 1, the renovation?
That's just slightly over 10 million. I think it's 10,029,000 some dollars.
So most of it is really part of the refinancing?
That's correct.
Okay.
Part A is where we're taking out the current draw program that had the EMS renovations for Station 1 and RTP. And I think it was one more project.
It's okay.
Okay.
I
And
do
then
remember reading the
C,
projects.
yeah, C is a refunding for 2012 and 2014 lobs. It's a taxable refunding. As of today, if we had went to market today, we should have received a net present value savings of about $5 million over the life of the debt. So that's the bulk.
Awesome. That sounds really like excellent financial
Thank you.
management. Thank you for that. I don't know, I guess, we talked a little bit on Friday about the limited number of times that we can use limited obligation bonds, and so we've seen it, I see it a couple of times on our agenda tonight, and I'm just, thinking about the story of doom and gloom about our financial future and our sustainability, and just wanting to be sure that with all of our financing and refinancing that we're taking the most prudent and the most cost-saving approach possible, and it sounds like we are, but this is a limited obligation.
Yes, because in our
bond again,
discussions with both our FA and our bond counsel, the reason we wanted to move forward with Admin 1 renovations is because the contract is being awarded at the December meeting, so it's shovel-ready, and the interest rates are so low that it's in our best interest to go ahead with that now at this time in January, which is when we would do the issuance.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to move forward with items 19-0535 through 19-0574.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Recca, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the consent agenda is unanimously approved. Okay, we have a public hearing this evening, 19-0568, Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment, Omnibus Changes 13, TC 1900001. And we have Michael Stock with us. Oh, look, you're already up there. And Patrick Young is with us, too. Maybe going to stay seated for the moment. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Here.
Michael Stock with the Planning Department. Text Amendment TC 1901 consists of technical revisions and minor policy changes to various provisions of the Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO. The amendments are identified as necessary corrections, clarifications, reorganization, or other minor changes to clarify the intent of the regulations or codify interpretations of regulations, or to reflect minor policy changes, some of which are not solely technical in nature. Other additional amendments are proposed specific to a number of UDO provisions, including Comprehensive Plan Evaluation Assessment Report, EAR, limited agricultural permits and domestic chickens, sedimentation erosion control regulations, accessory solar installations, and expanded sidewalk placement. The Joint City-County Planning Committee reviewed the text amendment and indicated no concerns. The Planning Commission recommended approval 12-0 of the text amendment at its September 10th meeting. The City Council approved the amendments at its November 18th meeting. As a reminder, the Board of Commissioners will be required to take two actions. The first would be action on the appropriate statement of consistency found in Attachment A, and the second would be an action on the ordinance amendment itself, Attachment B. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And Ryan Eves from the county is also here if you have any questions about the soil and sedimentation erosion control. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Ryan, did you want to come up and do any overview of? You just want to answer questions? Okay. So, Commissioner Recca.
So, Michael, I just noticed in the text amendments that as related to impact fees outside, we used to have a provision that it would apply everywhere, I think maybe the open space, except the rural district, but it's been changed to within the city. Can you give me some history on that? I think we had the ability, I'm not sure we were exercising it regularly, and maybe that's why it got changed.
And if I may clarify your question, are we talking about the recreation land impact fees? We are really just changing the terminology from rural tier to county and from other tiers to in the city to reflect actually how those impact fees are carried out. So it's more of a consistency clarification change.
I thought I saw something where it was being changed.
Page 21 is where that's happening,
Look at that.
right underneath the sidewalk changes. So no change in the standards beyond just indicating county versus city instead of going by tiers.
Then it must have been a different provision that got changed where it was applying in the county everywhere but rural, and now it's only city. Didn't mark it.
Blanking on what that would be at the moment.
Well, why don't we'll move on, and I'll try to find the provision. Thank you.
Any other questions right now? Commissioner Carter.
Thank you for all this work, and I especially appreciate in the memo, the summary of the changes. It's difficult to kind of wade through it all and make complete sense of it all.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that. was really excited to see the part about sidewalks on both sides of the street. To me, that doesn't seem minor. Is that one of the ones that you're referring to as more of a?
Yes, you're right. It's probably not minor in the sense
You
of.
said some were more like policy.
Yes, this is a policy change. This would involve a policy change, probably a long time coming.
Yeah.
But it is one that has been discussed between planning and transportation and other stakeholders, and we thought this was the right, it was time to move forward with it.
Have more sidewalks to walk on.
That's right.
That would be wonderful. And also, I was happy to see the allowance for solar panels,
Yes.
that addition.
Yes, that was a city initiative through the General Services Department to get a Soul Smart accreditation of, I believe, gold to add those more explicit allowances within our ordinance. They did a study of our ordinance, and it wasn't that the ordinance was lacking per se in allowing solar amenities, but it needed more specific language to get a certain rating, so we added those provisions in there.
I see. And I have another question. It might be for Ryan because it's about the sedimentation and erosion controls. But before I get to that, could I just ask, Michael, can you think of any other proposed changes that are in that policy category? That, I just want to be sure I think about those. Want to be sure.
The comprehensive plan evaluation assessment report is probably in that policy category, just recognizing that we're doing a brand new comprehensive plan initiative, and the requirements for that EAR kind of become moot, and so we revised that to just do a future land use rectification until we do have a new comprehensive plan, and we'll see what the reporting policies and updating policies would be for that new comprehensive plan. Other thing, the chickens, that's a city only, and that was a permit that was established back in the late 2000s. Durham was one of the few municipalities that considered and would allow urban chickens, but there was a lot of trepidation with it, and thus they established a very rigorous permitting process. Well, I think I've outlined it in the memo pretty clearly that I think we can move on from that, and City Council didn't blink an eye with that. And I'm trying to see, and I think the expanded sidewalks, those are the ones that really just pop out.
Okay.
I might be missing one or two, but.
Fantastic. Those are all ones I noticed.
Yeah.
Okay, then my question, I think, for Ryan, it's on page 30. It's about the ability of someone who is applying to be eligible for the agriculture exemption from the sedimentation and erosion controls. If they want to appeal that denial, that they actually can appeal to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes, we wanted to create a process for appeal that would allow, multiple steps. As I think, hopefully you saw the memo that we provided as well. This was a process that we looked at other communities, at things that, other communities were doing, and along the lines of appeals for some of the civil penalties that go along all the way up to, can go from, the county engineer up to the Board of Commissioners. We wanted to have something that was consistent.
Wow, I just didn't realize that we sat as a quasi-judicial body ever. I know with some HR challenges in the past, we've wondered if it would actually escalate to the level of the Board of County Commissioners, and it didn't. Ellen, have you ever? Yes.
Lots of times.
Lots of times. Okay. Well, that's a nice way to politicize the appeals process, huh?
That wasn't necessarily our intention.
Anytime there's a major special use permit, we're sitting as a quasi-judicial body.
Well, I'm just thinking, we haven't had an appeal of any ordinance or anything that I can think of since James and I have been here. So it seemed unusual to me. But I'm glad to hear it's not atypical after all.
I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but over a long period of time I have. And more of our land use decisions, I think we've pruned it back and moved some that were major special use permits are now minor and go to Board of Adjustment. But we used to have quite a few.
And
would
also
come to us.
because so many annexations and things are now happening directly going to the city instead of coming here first. So we're,
Well,
yeah,
I
it
really
hasn't happened very much since.
condone having a process, so way to go with that. That's all.
Commissioner Hill?
Sure. Very quickly, I want to agree with my colleague and thank you for expanding sidewalks. I know there's been a big push with bike lanes, but most low-wealth people, if they're using public transportation, that final mile is they're usually walked, and I think it's important that we support sidewalks. I know they're not cheap. That linear square foot price is expensive, but I do want to thank you for expanding sidewalks. That's very important. So thanks.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Recco?
So I found the provision, it's on the bottom of page 21, and you were right, Michael. It's the one underneath that refers to a change that goes to in the city. But my question would be, and maybe this is for our manager and staff, we have been collecting fees for recreational purposes if a dwelling unit's built outside the city limits. And I'd just be curious as to how much we've collected and what we use those fees for. We don't need to answer it tonight, but if you could just get us the information at a later date.
So, Commissioner Recco, if I might, Pat Young with the Planning Department. All I can add to this is that that collection, you're correct. It's authorized by the Unified Development Ordinance, but it's collected through the Inspections Department at the time of building permit. So we'd have to coordinate with Gene Bradham and his staff to get that number, and we certainly can get that to the manager in the next day or so.
Okay, it'd just be interesting because I don't remember ever seeing an accounting. We don't have a lot of dwelling units built outside the city limits, so it would be a relatively small amount of money, but it would still be interesting to know about how much has been generated and what it's been used for. Thank you.
Commissioner Carter?
Yeah, I forgot one of my important questions, and it's for Ryan. And Ryan, would you be able to summarize what you think are some of the improvements to the sedimentation and erosion controls that would be changes that would be improvements for this, situation on Benny Ross Road that we've heard a lot about?
Yeah, I mean, one of the major ones is with regards to that agricultural exemption that, you spoke to earlier. That may or may not have affected the Benny Ross Road, specifically that project, but some of the other ones in the area that have sought that exemption. One of the things that exists within the current ordinance, or I guess maybe doesn't exist, is the ability for someone to assume an exemption as long as they meet those activities that are enumerated in the exemption. Bees, plant crops, etc. What we are proposing is to remove that assumption and add an application process whereby they would be provided or required to provide additional information to better enumerate what it is, what agricultural activity they'll be taking place, what their plans for the property are, perhaps a duration of time in which they are going to be conducting the activity. Additionally, along with that, we have added language that would require, or that allows the county to require a plan, an erosion control plan, if the county discovers sedimentation off-site, even on an agricultural property. And so those are a couple of things that we hope that would impact that, could have had an impact in the situations we've dealt with in the past. I think I've told referenced this before with this group, that agricultural exemption is a state exemption. It's part of the Sedimentation and Pollution Control Act, which is essentially what gives us our authority as a locally delegated program. And while we don't believe we can get rid of that exemption, it's a pretty big loophole. We're hoping that we can tighten that loophole. I'm trying to think of the other, specific measures or additions amendments that would address that project in specifically. Some of the requirements on stockpiles we would hope would be used to limit that project or something similar. Another one is one of the issues we had with that site was always finding out where the material was coming from and being able to try to limit some of that. And so we've included language that all of our projects at least would be required to provide us with documentation about where their fill material is going and where it's coming or where it's coming from, which we don't currently have the authority to do. So we've added that so we can get an idea of where dirt is moving about in the county. I think that's a majority of the ones that would speak to that project specifically. But again, the other factor is going to be just continuing to monitor the activities.
And if in the near future, some additional changes and improvements, if we decided, you all decided and recommended to us, maybe you heard from the community and decided to make some additional changes, that could happen. It could happen any number of times.
Absolutely. There's no limit to the number we can change, times we can change the UDO. There are certainly limits to things we can do. We can only do things that would be allowed by the state. And I suspect you're going to hear from some folks tonight about some of the things that they have suggested. What I would say is that one of the first step in our process, because we are a locally delegated program for erosion control, is we are regulated by the Sedimentation and Control Commission. And so any amendments to our program or any amendments to our ordinance have to go through them first. That's where the process starts. And so anything we suggest is vetted by the commission, it's vetted by their attorneys and the staff of DEQ. And then once they've kind of given their blessing, we can go through our local process, as Mike kind of laid out the process by which all of the different committees, councils, commissions that have laid eyes on these so far. That's when we can start once we have the blessing of the Sedimentation Control Commission. These particular amendments went to the commission in May. And so, that's when we were able to start our process. Unfortunately, the commission only meets quarterly, so we have to time and balance when we're going to go before the commission around their schedule. But to your question, no, there's not necessarily a limit of how often we can make updates.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I was going to wait on questions on this till after the public hearing, but since it's been started, I just want to ask a couple of follow-up questions. First of all, Ryan, I want to thank you for your answers to the issues raised by the citizen who wrote the letter to us yesterday. I thought she raised some really good points, but you have some good answers. The one area, though, where we do have some discretion based on your answers is the height of the fill dirt on a site. And you've suggested setting it now at 30 feet. What was it in the original, in the ordinance we're amending?
There was no.
There was no cap at all. Okay. But and you said you looked at some other counties. My question on that, though, is we have some experts on soil and erosion control at NC State. Did you reach out at all to any of them to ask them what their guidance would be?
No, ma'am, not in the construction of these amendments, no.
So that might be, and I understand what you're saying, that we don't have as much discretion, and anything we do has to go through the State Sedimentation and Erosion Control Commission, et cetera. But if we decide to pursue further work on this issue, it seems like getting some guidance from the staff over at NC State might be a very good way to go, in the areas where we have some discretion.
Absolutely.
And then if there are areas, that they point out where they say, this is an area that is troublesome and can lead to problems, then what we would want to try to do is maybe work with our Association of County Commissioners to try to get counties to agree on a statutory, seeking a change that we would then advance to the Sedimentation and Erosion Control Commission or to the legislature, depending on the purview. But so there may be other remedies, and those would be even longer term. But I am concerned about the issue and all the pictures. Clearly, it seems as though some things are out of control. But I understand better now, after seeing your answers to the questions, that we have a lot of limitations on what we can do. So thank you.
Thank you. I have comments too, but I'm going to wait until after the public hearing. So I am now going to open the public hearing, and we have 3 people signed up to speak. And I would ask that you please come over to the microphone and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And first we have Ruth McDaniel, and then Tammy Sawaya, and Don Pascal. And while they're coming up to the microphone, I just want to acknowledge all of the residents who are here on this issue and who have been working really, 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 really hard for a long time on this. Really appreciate all of your incredible work on this. I also want to acknowledge our staff, Larissa Williams and also Brian Eves, who have also been working really hard. I have been at some meetings about this, and there have been a lot of people working at the local level, the state level, this is a very serious issue that we have been dealing with in Durham County. So, first from you, Ruth.
Hi, my name is Ruth McDaniel. I live at 277 Benny Ross Road in Durham County. It is directly across from 550 Benny Ross Road, which is one of the sites in question. I'd like to thank you for your service to Durham County. I very much appreciate it. I really want to voice to you my concerns about the dangers that are posed to our natural resources from the dumping that my community has witnessed. There are quite a few people from my community here. Would you all stand for just a minute? Thank you. So we're really, really concerned. What I've seen is dangerous, it's damaging, and in a lot of cases, it's illegal. I am a soil scientist. I have a soil science degree from North Carolina State University. Rich McLaughlin is your guy there on sedimentation and erosion control. I'm also a farmer, so I understand the agricultural end of this too. I want to clearly state that, in my opinion, the proposed changes to the UDO are not going to stop the type of environmental abuse that I've witnessed. It is also my understanding that these changes were made without significant stakeholder input. For example, North Carolina State, also the Environmental Affairs Board, the Durham Soil and Water Conservation District Board, community members like myself, These people were not consulted on this, and I have a lot of concerns about that because they have significant points of content knowledge to offer, as well as people from my community who have experiential knowledge. I ask that you all do not approve these changes because it's not our best work. As a community, we can do better than this. I understand that that may take time. It is also my belief, from having gone through many public documents and my work on this, that there are existing regulations that could have and should have been enforced, which would have stopped a lot of what we dealt with. The other thing is that when community members witness environmental abuse that goes unchecked, despite efforts to get relief from county and state agencies, their confidence in the basic fairness of the legal system is shaken. Involving communities in governance and rulemaking ensures that the process is transparent and has buy-in from community members. And what we ask for first is that the existing regulations be enforced. I understand that multiple regulatory agencies were involved in this, and they have expertise that is important. There are many, many other stakeholders with expertise who are not involved. And so I ask that you do not approve these now, and I ask that this work be done by the community with many stakeholders, with people with subject expertise. I sent you all a memo where I went through specific concerns that I have, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Tammy Sawaya.
Thank you. My name is Tammy Sueya.
Sorry, I apologize for not pronouncing your name correctly.
That's okay. I live at 2115 Baptist Road, and I have lived in the community for 15 years, and I have been working this situation with Ruth and other community members for over a year. I was encouraged when we met in March with multiple agencies, and they heard our story. I felt like Durham County cared, and they would really work to alleviate future situations like we have experienced on Benny Ross Road. However, when I read the draft of the ordinance proposed changes, I felt like we might have not have done our best. I think we've missed our mark. And I think also that there's a lot of enforcement that can be done with the rules that are in place. I beg that the board reconsider and delay the vote. I think there could be other subject matter experts that should play into this ordinances and would help alleviate future sites. We have two communities that are coming at the end of Baptist Road where there's development everywhere. There's acres for sale on Baptist Road. I'm really concerned of another Benny Ross Road. And my family plans to live there. My son plans to live there. So I beg you that you protect our community and our environment. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, and Don Pascal.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Don Pascal. I reside at 2016 Baptist Road, just down the road from Tammy. I agree with everything that Tammy and Ruth has said. I would like to reiterate that some of the estimates of the traffic that we are involved with there, it's not exaggerated traffic. There's nothing, it's not uncommon to see 6, 7 dump trucks in a row without any break in between going down the road with loads, and a lot of times they're overloaded. We've talked to the law enforcement, the county sheriff, and also the Department of Motor Vehicles, their weight enforcement people. They have come out, staked out the area. Of course, when they're seen, word gets back to the rest of the drivers, and they either divert for the day or start making sure their loads are topped off right. Also, this Benny Ross site connects to my property on the east end. My wife and I, our property, we have 7 acres, and it runs into borders with that Benny Ross area. And my concern is the water quality, because I have a well. We don't have any water out there other than well, and I feel blessed because I seem to have more water than most of the neighbors, and I'm getting concerned about what might be in my water because they are directly behind me with this dumping. We don't know, and I've seen them as 2, 3 o'clock in the morning running trucks, which kind of concerned me that maybe some clandestine type activity was taking place because no law enforcement was on other than the sheriff's department, and they're out busy in other parts of the county. Also, the reckless driving manner, I've been actually run off the road. I've had to hit the shoulder of the road meeting the dump truck in the curb. They didn't even check up on it. They considered, and I was in law enforcement, and I can gauge speed pretty well, and they were well over the speed limit. I'm concerned about I have numerous grandchildren, but 3 of them just got licenses. I'm concerned about their inexperience driving and meeting these trucks and not knowing what to do, being involved in an accident. Also, there is mud that accumulates because they don't stop when it's raining. They have these dump trucks pulling in on this mud, getting mud in the tires and coming back out and slinging it on the road. And it's actually been probably 1/4 of an inch thick. It's worse than snow and ice. I've driven on snow and ice, and it is worse, and especially when people get into it and realize they're into it and hit their brakes, and it gets very dangerous. So all of these are concerns of mine that need to be addressed. I've lived in the area for 17 years. Some of my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, they've lived there pretty much all their life, just about. It's a good community, and we hate to see it going to where it's going. I have to pay, with the septic system I had to have the NC State to come out and do a soil study on my property before I could even build and put a place there because of the sediment and what have you. And I got a system that cost me about $20,000, and I have to have it inspected yearly. And I'll close with this, but I have to have it inspected yearly. If I fail to renew my permit, I get a $10,000 per day fine. Mr. Stout got a $25,000 thing. He makes bukus off of his, and I don't make anything off of my property. I'm there to live. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. So, just to follow up, Brian, on some of the concerns that we've heard.
We're going to close the public hearing.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to close it right yet. I think. Yeah. So, just to follow up on the concerns, yeah, we go to have a response. I know that you did send us an email. I forwarded what you had sent me to the staff to ask them for response. So if you could specifically respond to concerns about why it's better to at least move forward with what we have right now as a first step versus doing nothing. I think that would be one thing we'd like to hear response with. The second is we heard the need to enforce existing regulations first. If you could respond to what is happening with enforcing existing regulations.
Okay, so to your first question, or to respond to the first point, as I suggested to you in my email, and I don't know if all the commissioners had a chance to to review that, but one of the reasons I would suggest that we move forward, and back to Commissioner Carter's question earlier as to how often can we make these amendments. Again, there's not a limit. The main limit is the Sedimentation or Control Commission's kind of schedule, and so as well as the process, then the local process. So one of the reasons I would ask that we go forward with these amendments as they are is due to that schedule. If we wait, if we do not approve these amendments and wait, there'll be no changes to what we currently have, which limits our ability to do anything new other than what we have until we can make those changes. And so the Sedimentation Control Commission does not meet again until February, and that would be the first opportunity we would have to propose new amendments. And then we would have to, again, go back through our local process. And so we'd essentially be looking at potentially next summer before we'd have any, or later to have any changes to the ordinance. And so, as I said, and as I have already had conversations with the Environmental Affairs Board, we are looking to have an open process. We're looking to start working with them to make some additional changes and I appreciate Ms. McDaniel's her memo and information that we can, is a beginning of a dialogue for some additional changes and amendments. We also will be hopefully setting up some meetings with members of the EAB in the coming months to do that, with an eye knowing that we have an opportunity in February to go ahead and start that process over again. Even as we, if we adopt these tonight, we can still continue to refine our ordinance. As to, enforcing what we currently have available to us, I think we've certainly learned a lot from what the issues we had out at Benny Ross Road. We have, I've forged, I think our department's forged a better relationship with the county attorney's office, with Larissa in particular, that to better understand how we can enforce what we have, to what level we can enforce what we have, and also to understand what we can't do. And so, we have a better understanding of our limitations under the Sedimentation Pollution Control Act. And we've also, I think, done a better job where we can't necessarily do something of reaching out to our partners at the state, whether in Division of Water Resources, solid waste management, that section of NCDEQ, and try to find ways where maybe we're limited, but they can step in and do something more, especially with respect to sites, the agricultural sites and these dump sites. So, I think we've learned a lot. I think our process is stronger, and I think it'll be even stronger with these amendments.
Okay, and in regards to the actual penalty amount, do we have any options around that, or?
So the penalty amount for Mr. Stout on Benny Ross Road is actually $94,000, maybe a little more than $94,000. With respect to what's in the ordinance currently, and that's largely due to even the way the ordinance is currently written, if you don't abate with 180 days, that's your kind of limit to prevent your maximum penalty of not $25,000. That was not done within the 180 days, and so his penalty is the full amount of $94,000. However, we're limited by state statute as to what the maximum penalty can be, and that's what you see in the current ordinance and what will continue in the old or in the new.
We would have to go to the state. We would have to go through a process to have the state ordinance changed.
Yes, the general statute would have to be changed. Okay. And it was actually, that limit was actually put in place maybe 4 years ago. The limit was added approximately 4 years ago.
So, related to what Commissioner Reckow said, I think that if we're going to move forward with this with the eye on seeing how we can improve this and make changes, I think it would be good to also be thinking about what are things that need to be that we can change, but what are things that really need to be changed at the state level, that we can involve our state delegation, that we can involve the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. So it would be helpful to be focusing on both of those.
Absolutely. And I would say, just so we will absolutely do those things. I think that's a great plan. That is some of the role the Sedimentation Control Commission is kind of meant to play, and the state sedimentation specialist. Some of the role they play is being a point of contact for local programs. But I absolutely agree. We can reach out to others to hopefully form more of a coalition of new amendments.
And in terms of some of the issues that came up just about the condition of the roads and safety issues, what can we do about that? Because that's obviously not addressed by the ordinance. What strategy do we have around that?
So unless I'm unaware of some things, I believe most of all the activity in the area has stopped, and particularly at the Benny Ross site, the activity has ceased since early this year. I know there are other sites in the area that have had issues, and we've dealt with those as we could. And I see Ms. McDaniel kind of shaking her head, so hopefully she'll inform me if there are other issues. But we know most of the activity is currently, from what we've heard and seen, is not ongoing. But when, again, kind of back to what I spoke to earlier, one of the things that we are including in these amendments is the ability to require an erosion control plan for off-site sediment, which we would certainly consider tracking and what we call tracking. So, sediment, mud reaching a road would be off-site. It would be off the property. We could then use that as something that would trigger that requirement for a plan. And then if a plan is approved, we can hold a property owner to that plan.
Okay. And then in terms of concerns about people's well water and, what can we do about that?
So it's my understanding that we don't necessarily have the authority because we don't regulate that particular thing. We have forwarded all of those issues to the Division of Solid Waste, the state, to request that they provide if they're within their ability to provide any kind of water quality testing and things like that. The Division of Water Resources can also do water quality testing, but that's not something that we have within our authority, is my understanding.
Have we done that yet with any of them?
Yes, they've been these complaints, and we've had a number of conversations and forwarded a number of these things to the state at this point.
They have been requested to come in and test those wells, and they have done it?
I don't believe, no, I don't think we have not necessarily made specific requests for testing wells. We've notified them of these dump sites and the concerns that were expressed to us regarding, what material might have been brought in or what might be included in the film material, and then that would be potentially what they could test would be the soil, not necessarily the wells.
Okay, so have they come in and done the testing?
I don't believe so.
Okay, can we do that? Then can we initiate? What does it take to get that going?
I can't speak to that. I'm not sure.
Seems like that would be a good next step.
And we can again, make that request of the state again.
Okay. Commissioner Hill?
When we were first briefed on this, I was kind of surprised that this activity is even considered agriculture. I'd never heard of this before, and other than that surprise, also one of the things that really kind of I found concerning was the top scraping from roads. I mean, God knows what's in there, and that really does concern me, and to hear that there's not constant testing going on, I don't know. I just find that a bit alarming.
Commissioner Hill, may I clarify something?
Yes.
Just for clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, Larissa or Ryan, I don't think that the properties that have been discussed tonight are the subject of an ag exemption.
One of them is 550 Benny Ross Road, could have entirely been regulated with rules that we have, and I'd like to think that have been.
Okay. But your point is well taken about how some farm property can be used to receive this field. That is a point well taken, and it's in state law. And so, again, maybe that's something that the association may need to take a look at.
Commissioner Recco.
So when people get a permit to accept this type of fill on their site, is it supposed to be just straight dirt with no, or it was dirt and maybe rock, but no other materials in it?
So there are, I guess, three different, three different ways that to speak to that, as I understand. So there's an agricultural site that would be agriculture, but they would be accepting would be beneficial fill material, which would be mainly would be just dirt. It can include asphalt, and it can include concrete. And the definition of beneficial fill and the regulatory agency for beneficial fill is solid waste. They would be the ones that determines if it meets beneficial fill. There, a permitted site or a site with a land disturbance permit, they really can only take in dirt. They're looking at filling in for for home building, for building a business, and so, that would fall under our regulation. And then there is, what would truly be a dump or a land clearing and inert debris or a garbage dump. And that would be regulated through solid waste as well as, our planning and zoning folks to determine if they were going to allow that. So there really is kind of three parts to your question.
So the ones, though, that come to your shop for a permit are supposed to just have dirt, maybe mixed in, some rocks mixed in, but
Yes.
dirt.
It would not be, trash material and things like that. It would be just mostly dirt.
But, so, are you allowed under this permit? I mean, I know when you're permitting things that require sedimentation, erosion control protections, you can go on site to make sure that the protection measures are in place. Can you make a spot check on these sites? Can you go in periodically and look and see what's going on?
Yeah. Are you speaking to the agricultural sites or all sites?
I'm talking about the ones that you specifically said go to your.
Yes, the projects that have a land disturbance permit, we inspect. Our goal is to inspect every site once a month. We don't always, meet that 100% of the time, but we do pretty well.
So when you go on site, do you ever see materials in the fill that's been brought that look like they're not just soil and rock?
I feel confident that we do, and when we do, we would ask them, especially if it included trash or something, beyond construction debris, we would certainly require that to be removed. But we don't see it. It's not something we see on a regular basis. Most of what we see is dirt. It's moving, from one part of a site to another on most of our land disturbance permitted sites.
So if they go in and see something that's not supposed to be there, trash or whatever, in the dirt, what are the steps that your staff takes at that point in time?
That would be something we would initially bring up with the contractor, but if it was something that was, and have them remove it, if it was a pervasive issue, that might be something we bring in solid waste because they have the ability to declare something a dump and then can create do their own violation or create their own notices of violation, et cetera. But something we saw is something we would require them to remove.
And at what point would they be fined for their actions that aren't in compliance with what they said they were going to do?
So our typical process for noncompliance, we, first instance for a minor violation, and I'm not saying I would consider that a minor violation, but just to enumerate our process. Minor violation, when we do an inspection, we finish an inspection with an inspection report, and that inspection report says if the site's in compliance or it's not in compliance. If it's not in compliance, we list out the things that are not in compliant, and then we recommend or we require measures to be taken to bring the site into compliance. And then we give them a deadline. Depending on the severity of what's taking place, and also what we believe to be the ability to to bring the site into compliance, we give them, 1 to 2 weeks typically. Then we follow up within 2 weeks, around their deadline, and see if they've completed that action, or those actions. If they've done, then new inspection report's done, and the site's put back into compliance. If they have not, then that's when we issue a notice of violation. And that first notice of violation, again, it reiterates the things that have not been done. It then gives them a new deadline for compliance, again, based on what needs to be done and other factors. And then, and in that notice of violation, we list out the things that can then occur, such as civil penalties, revocation of a permit, there's court action, all the criminal penalties, all those things can be done following a notice of violation, and that's what's included in the notice of violation. We then follow up after that, on the date that we've given them to come into compliance. At that stage, if they still aren't in compliance, that's when we would initiate civil penalties.
And at that point or later with the civil penalties, is there some point where if they're still not in compliance, that you say that they need to cease accepting additional fill?
So in the instance of a fill site or something like that, that's something we would have likely included in the initial notice of violation, would be to stop taking material. And in a different site, we're not always talking about a site that's taking in fill material. But what we typically do is, and per the ordinance, require. We can require only action to be the only action allowed on a site to be that in which to bring into compliance with erosion control measures. But what we usually do is give them a date for compliance, and then we come back for our follow-up inspection, and then go from there.
So I'd be curious if maybe we could ask the neighbors whether they have seen trucks still going into sites that were already under a situation of not being in compliance. Because then it seems like there should be double jeopardy in terms of fines, but I would just be curious. Do you know that?
Yes, Commissioner Redcall, thank you for your question. I think Chair Jacobs could certainly address that. When 550 Benny Ross Road was finally told to stop dumping after a year and a half, and I'd like to note that the site was not in compliance. There are multiple NOVs that were issued. There was a 4-month period when all of my neighbors were calling and emailing that there was no inspection whatsoever that occurred. There are very few inspections on this site. In addition to this, in October of 2018, there was another employee, Vince Chiricella, who I worked with him a lot. He was very helpful. I'm very sad he's not with this department anymore. Vince sat and followed a truck in and videoed the trash that they were dumping. And so he ordered them to stop, and they continued to dump through the end of December of 2018. And I know that Chair Jacobs was focused enough that when I was sending her emails at 11 o'clock at night when the trucks were coming in, that she was replying to them. So yes, this has continued. The beneficial fill statute also states that that statute still has to come within all local ordinances. So one of the local ordinances is that there is required to be vegetative cover, and that's really, really important. As a soil scientist, I have to tell you, that is the screaming problem that we are seeing here. At 101 Southview Road, after that site had citations from the Department of Environmental Quality, I'd like to state that I notified them. I was the person who made that call. So I made that call in April of 2018, and they were very responsive and came out very quickly. They found over 6 inches of sediment in the stream across from me. They found over 10 inches of sediment at 101 Southview Road. There was prolific dumping that you have pictures of at 101 Southview Road over the summer. I screamed and yelled about it. I was told by Ryan that they would remind them of vegetative cover. That is still not covered. And according to beneficial fill, they still have to obey that rule. So that stuff is sitting there now uncovered. There is real erosion. The stream that Mr. Purhier was just fined $22,000, where he could have been fined $50 million. I was at that hearing where he asked to have his fees reduced. But that stream that they already went through and did all this on, I'm quite sure that if they go and look at that stream again, it's all sedimented in again. So what you're hearing me refer to as real erosion are kind of those little gullies that appear, and that's like super dangerous, and it's going on all over that site. So I don't understand how, if the ordinance says they have to have vegetative cover, that's not being done. And I don't understand how, if Benny Ross Road, which wasn't an ag site, and the ag issue really does need to be addressed, but it wasn't even an ag site, there were huge chunks of concrete that were visible along the property lines that you all have pictures of. There's nothing about this site that's, like, you can walk around the edges. So I don't understand how we have these ordinances and how this hasn't been handled, and it is still ongoing. And no, right now, there's nobody coming into Benny Ross Road. Routinely, we will start to hear something at night, and we will start to turn lights on, do things. So Russell knows that we're watching him, but it just starts somewhere else. And, we just went through another site that was done. So I want to help you understand, too, the amount of money that's involved here, because this person claims they're buying this, which is completely unbelievable. No one would pay. He has a letter on file with your zoning commission that says he paid $90,000 for what you see piled up at Benny Ross Road. So why anybody in the world would pay $90,000 to make a giant brick, I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. But to give you an idea of the money involved, just today, because my community and I, we've only had so much time to go through our public documents that we've requested. Today, I had a community member who contacted me because they'd started to go through the DOT documents regarding some dumping of diamond grindings, which is a whole nother very frightening issue that I think I might ask to address to you in your work session. So I emailed the document to Commissioner Carter, and I have it here that I can share with you. Just that contract from DOT, which is then, if you start to follow the paperwork disguised under this, passed off to this subcontractor to that contract was for $1.9 million. So this is what we're fighting against. So there is going to continue to be pressure to do this because the area around Falls Lake is one of the few areas that is geographically close to a lot of development. And it is also the water source for 500,000 people, not to mention the few of us that live there, and we don't even have any municipal water source. So there are a lot of problems, and what I hear here from Ryan is not consistent with what we've observed. It's extremely upsetting. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you. I just want to give Ryan a chance to respond. So why is there still not vegetative cover on this site?
That's something we're going to have to look into and address. And I have been, in fairly constant contact with that property. Well, it's the lessee at this point that's working on the site. He's indicated that he was going to begin working on the site again and continue to grade the site fairly as recent as a couple weeks ago. But obviously, it's time to check into that again and address it.
And where are we at with other compliance issues? Because I know that Larissa, you were working on this, and what is the status report on all the other issues that have needed remediation on different sites?
I don't know if Larissa wants to speak to that. It's still, with regards to Benny Ross Road, it's still ongoing. I'll let her just talk about that.
It is, as far as 550 Benny Ross Road is concerned, I am still in constant contact with the owner's attorney, Mr. Stout's attorney. You know, it's potential litigation involved, but that is something that we are working on right now, as a matter of fact. And the other sites, I believe they're not right now active, is that correct? So Ryan informs me whenever he gets any information about any activity going on, and I work with him to try to see if there's a way to stop that activity, depending upon what it is. So I know that I've been in contact with Ms. McDaniels quite a bit, and I hope she can attest to the fact that we've been trying to work with her whenever she does have concerns, as far as what I can do. And we will continue to do that. And we will work with her and with Tammy, I'm sorry, I can't remember your last name, but we'll work with them to address any concerns that they have with the UDO.
Well, yes, it sounds like one of the issues, though, that even when a site is not active, there are some things like the vegetative cover that still need to be followed up on. So I don't know, Mr. Manager, it just seems to me that we need some type of a comprehensive strategy in this part of the county, because I think Ruth makes a really good point that this is not going to be going away anytime soon. And, you know, we are trying to protect the watershed there. We even have plans for a park, Southview, a county regional park with the city. And we know that more and more people are going to be living out in this part of the county. So it seems to me we really should pull together our resources with the community, with our Soil and Water Board, the EAB, you know, and just bring everybody together and try to come up with some type of comprehensive strategy, because it's not just soil issues, it's water issues. And it feels really overwhelming at this point.
So when we have had thorny environmental issues in the past, we have often asked for our Environmental Affairs Board to study the issue. Here, in this case, we have two boards that could work on this, and maybe they could begin at least by inviting citizens in to discuss and hear from the staff as a joint effort, our Soil and Water Conservation Commission and our Environmental Affairs Board. But I would suggest that we refer this and actually make a written request, a letter to both of these boards requesting that they review the situation and consult with experts from NC State, look at best practices even from other parts of the country. The bottom line is bring us back recommendations on what they think we should do. Because you're absolutely right, whoever said it, I can't remember, maybe it was the chair, that this area of the county, being between Durham and Raleigh, is in a location where a lot of development is occurring all around it, and these developers need places to put extra soil as they excavate to build new buildings that maybe have underground parking or whatever, and they've got to get rid of dirt. They're looking for places, right? And I just think that we're going to have more and more of this situation. And sedimentation sounds benign, but all that sedimentation into our creeks leads to more flooding, because then the creek has less capacity to hold water. And so when we have heavy rains, more of it's going to go out on the adjoining properties, and there will be more flooding of areas, including places with homes, and people will have damage to houses. So this is an environmental issue, but it's also an issue in terms of safety and security for our residents, because if we don't handle sedimentation, there will be even more flooding than we have now.
So before I close the public hearing, I just want to see if there's any other additional things that you felt that we needed to know from the residents. And you would need to come to the microphone.
I would just first off really like to thank you for your concern. What I would suggest is that, yes, this definitely needs further study. And I know I talked to people on the EAB and on the Soil and Water Conservation Board, and they hadn't been brought in on this until, well, EAB very lately because I made a presentation to them, but Soil and Water Conservation District, no. I would suggest that in what I see here, the thing that concerns me the most for passing it right now is stating that a 30-foot stockpile is okay. So I would suggest that you remove that and take the changes that are there now and that we continue to improve them. But I am very concerned about somebody actually saying that a 30-foot stockpile is okay. Even though it doesn't say before, it doesn't have a size to these, I think that putting the size in is really dangerous. As a matter of fact, it's super dangerous right across the road from me. I also would really encourage you to look at other ways that you can enforce the existing statutes. As I read through them, at 550 Benny Ross Road, Russell Stout dumped in 4 acres in excess of what he had a permit to dump into, and according to the existing statutes, he could be forced to remove that. And even though that would really stink for those of us that live around there, I think that's a financially expensive thing, and I think you might be able to arrive at a settlement with him if you begin to start to levy that existing rule. And we as a community would welcome being involved in that. So that is my input, that I would think if you strike the 30-foot stockpile, that as it is now, I don't think these regulations are negative. I still don't find them positive, but that's the one that I really don't want to see in there at all.
Okay, thank you. So I am going to close the public hearing. And so Ryan, just to bring that back to you, what your opinion is about removing that specific reference to the 30-foot stockpile, as the idea that that's possibly could have negative implications. Just would like to get your response to that.
I don't necessarily, I don't have a problem with removing that. I guess I would have to ask Mike and Larissa if that's a way we can do that or if we can do that. I don't know the answer to that. And I would welcome to have more conversations, going forward about, how we address stockpiles. The stockpile, these regulations for stockpiles are meant to be, they certainly are meant to address this kind of issue, but they also address other sites where, a developer may be stockpiling dirt. And so we want, our idea was to limit stockpiles on their property as well. It was meant to be a more holistic a limitation, not just address, and also address these kinds of situations. And so, if that's something the board chooses to eliminate, I think we can certainly have more, would welcome more conversation about what we choose to do going forward.
And I would just remind the board that the 30-foot stockpile is a cap, and that if we do eliminate it, then there is no cap. And so this is a first step in order to put a limitation on there. And again, we can continue to work on this, but I would propose that it's better to have a cap right now, which is lower compared to other counties, than to go without any kind of cap as we go forward.
Okay, and I understand this has already been approved by the city council as well.
It has.
Yeah, okay. So I guess, I would propose that if, we take action tonight, that we also clearly state that we are asking staff to work together with the community, with the Soil and Water Board, with the EAB to form some type of a task force to also consult with NC State and to really, and then come back to us. I know we're really almost in December, we're getting into the holidays. To be realistic, we're not going to make the next February meeting of the State Soil Sedimentation and Erosion Control Commission, but to come up with a realistic time period of a few months for you all to really work together, dig deep into every aspect of this, and to come up with some recommendations of a holistic approach and to bring more resources to this. So I would,
I would move that, Madam Chair, but I would like for our manager, on behalf of the board, to ask that Soil and Water and EAB both work with our staff. I think we need a written request, and we can send them what we've done, but say this is, at this point, we view this as an interim step, but we want more research done to see how much more we can or should do. So, and we might want to specifically in the written request have two categories. One would be steps we can take that are in compliance with current law, and then other steps that they feel would be desirable, but we need legislative authority.
okay, so Mr. Manager. Okay, and Commissioner Carter?
Well, I was just going to say I would certainly support the motion that you're making. But it feels like there's another problem. It feels like it's not just how good are our regulations. It feels like maybe the bigger problem even is how do we be sure that people are complying with the regulations, and what do we do when residents feel like they're not, and have pretty good evidence.
Right.
That feels really frustrating. And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, are more resources needed? I mean, I know that legally sounds like you're doing your best to try to make them comply. Figure out when you can. More from the legal. I'm talking about legally now, really. But I don't know.
Well, we can ask that the task force look at that as well.
Right.
Is, how are things working now, and what do we need to do to change the way we're even enforcing our current regulations?
Enforcement and monitoring.
Investigator.
I don't want to, please don't take this as coming off as making excuses. But I would like to point out that we're at a time of unprecedented growth in the county. We have roughly 180 active land disturbance permits that we are regulating with 3.5 FTEs.
Well, that was why I asked, actually.
And so, we're, like I said, we're doing, we've got, folks in the field all the time. We're doing the best we can with the resources we have. Again, our goals are to hit sites once a month, and we do pretty well meeting those goals. But, to your comment about resources, I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, again, I think that could be coming out of the recommendations. And I will say that every time I did get an email from somebody, I responded and followed up with staff, and staff would always follow up. They would go out and check on it, and our staff has been very responsive. And I know the work is ongoing. Okay, so is that a motion?
Right, and I'll include in the motion not only the new regulations, but also recommendations on monitoring and enforcement.
Second.
Okay, and this is to approve what is being proposed tonight.
Right, so we'll approve what is being proposed, and we need to recognize the city already approved the ordinance, so. But with the understanding, though, that depending on what we receive back, we may be making amendments even in the upcoming year, so fairly soon.
And did I have a second from you, Commissioner Carter?
Yes.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, 3, 4, 1 opposed, but the motion is still approved. And thank you, everybody. And we spent a lot of time on this, but this was really important. So, yes, thank
We
you.
have to do that consistent.
Oh, that's right. We need to do that.
Okay.
A motion on the statement and then a motion on the ordinance itself.
Okay.
So I move that we approve the text amendment consistency statement regarding PC 1900001 omnibus changes 13.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Carter, seconded by Commissioner Reckow. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So that first motion is unanimously approved. We have a second motion.
I'll make the second motion to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance incorporating revisions to amend Article 1, Article 3, Article 5, Article 6, Article 7, Article 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and to direct the county manager to communicate with Soil and Water Conservation Commission and Environmental Affairs Board about undertaking the task as enumerated earlier.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the second motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have boards and commission appointments.
Oh, that was quick.
Madam Chair, members of the board, have the results of your voting. Rick? For the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee, you could select 2 individuals, and you've selected Krista Gaston and Ann Schneider. For the Women's Commission, you could select 1 person, and you've selected Jenny Gomez. Those are your results.
Thank you. The board is requested to adjourn into closed session to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A4.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Hill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we're unanimously adjourned to closed session. We have adjourned from we have adjourned from closed session and given direction to staff, and I entertain a motion to adjourn this evening.
Move we adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner Carter, second by Commissioner Hill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving.